Hey, I'm Blair Best. It's Monday here on The Story, and tonight, new details on a former Clackamas County commissioner who is believed to be on the run outside of the country. But court documents have to say about where Melissa Fireside could have gone. Plus, SNAP benefits will be partially funded this month, the feds say. We check in with the state agency in charge of sending out that money to learn more. But first, people continue to protest outside the Portland Ice Building, some dressed in inflatable costumes. But how did it all start? I sat down with the Portland man who first donned a frog costume as a symbol of protest, a trend that has now spread far and wide. It's our big story tonight. Outside the Portland Ice Building, protesting in costume has become the norm. And it started with one character who stands out from the rest.
This is what it looks like. My name's Seth Todd. I go by Toad, but a lot of people who don't actually know me just know me as the Portland Protest Frog.
The Portland Protest Frog.
People like seeing it. You know, it brings a smile to people's faces, you know.
Seth had the idea.
You know, I like to say there's enough space to light a joint and smoke this in here, but...
After he and his friends first attended a protest outside the ice building back in June.
I learned that how they were handling their detainees and what they were doing, just not in Portland, but throughout the country.
Seth watched the nightly protests escalate.
And then at some point, it kind of got aggressive. And they started tear gassing us. Around the same time I started wearing my frog costume to kind of just boost morale. You know, we were getting tear gas quite often.
Is there any meaning behind the frog? Why choose a frog?
I just really like frogs.
Once inside the suit,
spicy in here.
Seth is reminded of protests past.
And it's really hard to spot clean tear gas out of a costume.
This viral video shows the moment a federal agent sprayed Seth.
I got maced in the frog hole and the air vent. It mainly stuck to my skin and stuff, but I don't really think it got picked up until like after I got pepper sprayed.
After that night, frogs quickly became a symbol of community resistance. Frogs are on posters downtown, on t-shirts, local shops now selling out of frog toys, and it was a main character at the October No Kings protest.
And people wearing frog hats, calling themselves the Frog Brigade, and I thought that was pretty dope.
It's even reached beyond the Portland Pond. People now dress as frogs at ice protests in major U.S. cities like LA and Chicago. Attention Seth was not expecting.
Panic. You know, I've never been in a position where I gained that many followers.
Then came the rhetoric from the White House.
But take a look at Portland sometime. These are wild, these are crazy people, and they're trying to burn down buildings.
Giving Seth even more reason, he says, to put on his frog suit.
You know, Trump started putting out the narrative that we were violent, we were, you know, aggressive, and start rioting and burning the city down. And so I just started continuing to wear it as a way to combat, you know, that narrative. I mean, if people want to take that and make a meaning out of it, that's great. I just like frogs, and I thought it was pretty funny to wear a frog costume in front of a DHS agent.
An image artists captured in these paintings.
I was like a little bit in shock, like holy crap, people made artwork of me.
Seth is going on 6 months, standing in costume outside the Portland Ice Building. Are you going to stop anytime soon?
No, I'm not going to stop.
His form of protest.
Oh, yeah, for sure.
Portland style.
People say I should put it in a museum.
But not quite yet.
Until we get what we want, and that's ice out of Portland.
So a New York City-based clothing company is now making shirts inspired by Seth's costume. 100% of the money from those shirt sales is being donated to the Immigrant Refugee Community Organization right here in Portland. The shirts are so popular, they're currently on back order for 6 to 8 weeks. But we want to hear from you. What do you think about all the protesters in costume? What sort of message do you think it sends? Email us at thestory@kgw.com or call and leave us a voicemail, 503-226-5090. Now, when it comes to the National Guard potentially being deployed to Portland's ICE building, over the weekend, a federal judge once again blocked the Trump administration from doing so, at least for now. Kyle Boshi is with me in the studio now. Kyle, get us up to speed on what happened yesterday.
So we got a decision yesterday, Sunday evening. Judge Karen Immerget issued a preliminary injunction until Friday while she makes a final decision. Bottom line, that means the National Guard will not deploy before Friday. Legal experts say, based on her ruling on the preliminary injunction, it seems very likely she'll grant that permanent injunction later on this week.
Is there any takeaways from the ruling itself or just more of what we've been hearing?
Yeah, just to back up a little bit, you remember this all follows a 3-day trial in federal court. We heard from the state of Oregon, California, and city of Portland. They're suing the Trump administration, claiming the president overstepped his authority. The feds argue no, he had every right to do so. The judge heard from a handful of witnesses, saw all kinds of exhibits. After reviewing the evidence, she clearly appears to be siding with the state of Oregon, city of Portland, and California, saying this is not a rebellion and federal officers at the ICE building can continue to do their jobs.
And the timing of her final decision is still sort of fluid?
Exactly. She could rule in theory at any time, although Friday is that deadline. If she does grant a permanent injunction, keep in mind, this ends the case at the lower district court level, but it's not over. It'll likely go on to the Ninth Circuit, maybe end up with the U.S. Supreme Court.
Okay, Kyle Boshi, thank you for staying on top of this for us. A partial relief today for hundreds of thousands of Oregonians after dual rulings on Friday. The Trump administration says it will partially fund SNAP, otherwise known as food stamps. The feds will use $4.65 billion from an emergency fund. However, that represents just over half of the more than $8 billion a month it costs to fully fund the program nationwide. In a court filing today, a representative for the U.S. Department of Agriculture said the agency chose not to use other emergency funds to fully fund SNAP in order to ensure there's no gap in children's nutrition programs through the end of the fiscal year. So, if you rely on SNAP benefits for help to pay for food, here's what you need to know. Because the program is not fully funded, you will not receive your normal benefits. And right now, it's not clear how much you'll get or when. Typically, the process of loading people's SNAP cards can take up to 2 weeks. Now, when we reached out to the Oregon Department of Human Services, that's the group who operates the SNAP program, about the timeline and amount that recipients might be getting this month, they told us they're waiting on the feds for more information. When we contacted the USDA to ask ourselves, we got a bounce back about the government shutdown at first, and then they directed us to a social media post by the Secretary of Agriculture. That post said it will take weeks for partial payments to be sent out and blamed Democrats for the government shutdown. November payments for millions of Americans have already been delayed. Now, it may not have the local pomp and circumstance of an even year at the polls, but tomorrow is Election Day. And there are a couple big issues on the ballot for people here in Multnomah County and also across the Columbia in Clark County and the state of Washington. Okay, here in Portland, it's all about parks. There's a parks levy on the ballot where Multnomah County voters will decide on a property tax renewal and increase as the current parks levy expires this year. Here's a look at what would change if this new levy is approved. A lot of numbers here, so try and stick with me. Instead of the 80-cent property tax on every $1,000 of assessed value, it would jump to $1.40, a 75% increase. For the median single-family residential property owner in Portland, assessed around $220,000, that would mean an increase of $11 per month, or about $130 more per year. Now, obviously, if your property is assessed at more than the median, $220,000, those numbers would be higher. The new levy would last 5 years and is projected to raise $456 million. Okay, notably here, Portland City Councilor Dan Ryan, who was previously in charge of Portland Parks, said he will be voting no on this measure. Writing Friday, "I love our parks, but this levy asks Portlanders to pay for inefficiencies the Bureau hasn't fixed. The Parks Bureau can and should generate more of its own revenue instead of relying again on taxpayers. Until we see real institutional change, it is not fair to keep coming back to voters for another tax increase. I'm voting no." Okay, other critics point to a recent audit of Parks and Rec that found 86% of Portland's parks assets were in poor or very bad condition. And the massive maintenance backlog for those assets, hundreds of millions of dollars worth, having no long-term funding plan to fix it. But despite those concerns, Mayor Keith Wilson was out stumping for the levy last week, going door to door, urging people to vote yes.
We have a parks levy on Tuesday that we're voting on, and if you could help with that, that would be great. I know that it's a difficult time, but we have to value the parks, and this is the time to really make sure that that value, that asset, is really high performing and well maintained.
Now, across the river in Vancouver, voters will decide on whether or not to fund 13 more police officers through a property tax hike of 15 cents per $1,000 of assessed value, coming out to about an extra $75 a year for a $500,000 home. Okay, the city tried something similar last year, but it failed at the ballot box. So the city's mayor trimmed the measure down, hoping to garner enough support to pass something this time around.
There were additional pieces in Prop 4, additional technology, for example, traffic lights and speeding lights and those types of things. We took that off. We have so many officers with a great amount of overtime. So 2 officers are doing the work of 3 with all of the overtime.
The mayor says Vancouver has the second lowest staffed police department in the state among cities of its size. She says the only answer is simply to hire more officers.
We need those officers to stop doing all the overtime. Go home. Let's bring in that 3rd officer to fill in that gap.
Okay, if approved, the measure is projected to raise $6 million a year for the next 6 years. And if we zoom out, there are 0 statewide measures on the Oregon ballot tomorrow, and Washington has just one, called Ballot Measure 8201. And that one's a push to expand funding for Washington's long-term care program that many families rely on. But the crux of the measure comes down to risk and the stock market. Alex McClune explains.
We'll send you a photo of us in Disneyland.
For 40 years, Melissa Watts has looked after Max,
Max needs to have help with every aspect of his care.
helping him dress, eat, and get through the day.
I add the vitamin L that he needs.
She's among supporters including healthcare workers and Planned Parenthood. The new amendment would allow Washington to use money in its long-term care fund, known as WaCares, and invest it in the stock market and other equities. The idea is that the fund would grow faster, boosting the financial bucket that funds the program and services like nursing home care, home health care, and more.
By diversifying the investments, it makes the contributions of workers go further by increasing the fund's rate of return.
The Washington State Actuary Office says approval could increase the fund by nearly $192 billion more by the year 2077. But a group of lawmakers opposed the amendment because of a glaring problem: risk.
The money has to be there when you need it. And I just think it sets a very not a good precedent.
State Representative Joe Schmick says the money currently comes from workers' paychecks and is invested conservatively in bonds and CDs, which the state constitution currently allows. In 2020, voters rejected a similar amendment attempt, and Schmick thinks voters should say no again in order to protect public funds and shield the cash from volatility.
Let's not gamble it.
Melissa pays into WaCares, so she'll get money back if something ever happens to her. And she wants to be on the same financial system that pays for pensions of firefighters and teachers in the state.
It's nice to have a safe way to make the big pot of money grow so that more of the things that we need will be able to be paid for.
In case you missed our show on Friday amid all the Halloween festivities, the search is on for former Clackamas County Commissioner Melissa Fireside. The Oregon Department of Justice believes she fled the country with her young son ahead of a December trial where she faces several felony charges related to theft. Well, tonight we're getting a look at a court document that helps explain how all of this came about. This is the affidavit filed by state lawyers asking for Fireside's release agreement to be revoked. Now, that agreement requires her to notify the court if she changes her address and also to stay in Oregon unless she has permission to leave. The document says that last week, Fireside's ex-partner and father of their 9-year-old son called the Clackamas County District Attorney's Office and said Fireside took their child out of school and apparently fled the country. He says he found out after the school notified him. Fireside has full custody of the child, but she and her ex do have a legal agreement when it comes to parenting, according to that document. The special agent with the State Department of Justice says he looked into Fireside's travel records and it showed she had not crossed any international borders since 2022. But TSA data showed Fireside had a flight from Mexico to Amsterdam last Tuesday. According to TSA and state law enforcement, she may have used a fake ID to cross into Mexico and then used an Austrian passport to fly to Amsterdam. State officials believe she took her 9-year-old with her, and they do not believe he is in danger. Now, if Fireside is confirmed to be outside the U.S., investigators say bringing her back to face justice may be challenging, depending on the country that she's in. Fireside's jury trial here at home is scheduled to begin December 2nd. Okay, coming up next on the story, a woman in Gresham calls 911 and starts ordering a pizza. It was no prank, but rather a call for help in an abusive situation. We hear from the local prosecutor who helped bring the suspect to justice. That's when the story returns. Now to a story about a 911 call that helped save a local woman from an abusive situation. The woman used coded language to help the dispatcher pick up on what was going on. We're going to play some of that call for you, but it's important to note we have altered the voice to protect their identity and won't be using any names. Devin Haskins has the story.
Inside an apartment complex in Gresham, a call for help.
911, what's the address of the emergency?
I would like to order a pizza.
A 911 dispatcher on one end, a woman on the other.
Okay, is there an apartment number?
I would like pineapple, chicken, and tomato sauce.
The call happened in July. A man and a woman had gotten into an argument that turned violent.
This incident happens, he ends up grabbing a metal pole that they found in the living room and using it against her.
The woman then locks herself in a bedroom and quietly calls for help.
Do you have an emergency? Just answer yes or no.
Yeah.
And ultimately, she makes the very smart and very brave decision to call police, which is not something she's really done in the past.
Annika Banda is a deputy district attorney with Multnomah County. She primarily focuses on domestic violence cases.
Getting cases even to my office, I think, is difficult. A lot of times people just want the police to come, they want it kind of to go away, and they want the situation to be diffused, but even getting them to make the initial call sometimes is a lot.
Yeah, domestic violence is control, it's manipulation, it's isolation.
Margot Martin is the CEO of Bradley Angle, an organization in Multnomah County that supports survivors of domestic violence. National statistics show that 1 in 4 women will become a victim.
It's hard to capture, right, the actual impact because many survivors are scared to go to authorities, scared to reach out to organizations.
Calling 911 to order a pizza was brought to light in a Super Bowl commercial in 2015.
Hey, what's going on there?
I'd like to order a pizza for delivery.
It's not in their training, but dispatchers are trained to listen for cues and other indicators in a caller's voice.
I think she just picked up that there was something ongoing, and we were kind of fortunate that this was a really, that this call taker really understood kind of what was going on.
How long is that delivery going to be now?
It's going to be real quick, okay?
What started as a call for help ended last week with a guilty verdict. The accused in the case was convicted of 2nd and 4th degree assault and unlawful use of a weapon. The assault charge brings a mandatory sentence of 70 months in prison, nearly 6 years. And a reminder, there are resources and support available 24/7 with the National Domestic Violence Hotline. That number is 800-799-7233. You can also text 88788. Let's head out to the Oregon coast now and check out the rainbow down in Yachats this morning. Karen sent us these pictures looking out over the Pacific from the Fireside Motel. She tells us they woke up to this today. Quite the way to kick off your Monday. Well, Chief Meteorologist Matt Zaffino joins me now. Matt, it seems like the few weeks between mid-October and early November are prime time for rainbows here in the Northwest.
Couple cool things about that shot. First of all, it was a morning rainbow. We tend to get more in the afternoon, or maybe that's just because of when I'm looking more. But
yeah, I think that might be why.
But no, meteorologically, the conditions are more common in the afternoon because that's when we get showers and breaks in the clouds. So it was pretty cool to see that rainbow on off to the west as opposed to the east. And they are fairly common this time of the year because we get a lot of that kind of weather where we get showers and sunbreaks. And of course, you need the combination of the two to get a rainbow. So pretty cool. Great shot. Loved it. Double rainbow there. All right. It's going to be hard to find rainbows the next few days because we'll have the rain, but not the light. And it's going to be rainy and windy begin tomorrow afternoon into Wednesday and Thursday. So weather impact alert for those 2 days. It is a rainy one right now. It's been raining for a better part of the day. East winds, but their light's only 47 degrees. So let's talk more about November rainfall because it really ramps up from October into November. November is our second wettest month of the year on average, and the average is 5.45 inches, which is 60% higher than the October average of 3.42. So a big difference in November rainfall compared to October rainfall. What about the temperatures? Yeah, they go down as you would expect. The average high November 1, 58. By the end of the month, it's down to 50. And then the sunset change, thanks to daylight saving time, of course, it goes way down to 4:27. Sunrise, on the other hand, gets earlier like it did this weekend. So let's dig into that a little bit more too and look at the sunrises back on Saturday, the 1st of November. That was our last sunrise of daylight saving time, and it was late, 7:50, right? Then yesterday and today, it was a lot earlier because we fell back and we gained that hour. So sunrise basically an hour or a little bit less than an hour earlier. This is for tomorrow, right? But as we go through November and into December, of course, the days are getting shorter no matter what time we call it. And by the end of November, it's down to 7:29. And by December 27th, look at that. Our sunrise is exactly what it was on November 1st. So we lose that extra hour of daylight that we gain in the morning by the end of December, and it stays that way until January 7th. And by the way, if you're not a fan of changing the clocks at all, if we didn't go back to standard time, that sunrise on December 27th through January 7th would be at nearly 9 o'clock. It would be at 8:50. So one benefit there. Okay. Doppler radar showing all the rain over us. It's going to be a rainy run. I think we'll get a break as we go into the first part of tomorrow. Rainfall about 1/3 to 4/10 of an inch so far today. There's also a coastal flood advisory And the reason for that is we've got a full moon on Wednesday. It is the full beaver moon in the month of November, and that is causing extremely high tides, running about 10 feet. So we may get a little bit of coastal flooding along Highway 101. All right, should we jump to the 7-day forecast, Blair? I think we should.
Yeah, let's take a quick look.
Okay, there's downtown right now. You know it's rainy. Tomorrow is going to be rainy, especially later in the day. And there's the really rainy weather on Wednesday and Thursday. Should break up, though. I think we'll have a mainly dry weekend. Fingers crossed.
Okay, Matt, thanks so much.
You bet.
We're back right after this. Well, that's the end of our show, folks. Thanks so much for watching. And don't forget, everyone has a story to tell. Have a great Monday night. I'll see you right back here tomorrow night.